Hello, folks. I'm Josh McGee, and welcome to another episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we're on the cusp of the beginning of soccer season here in the U.S. across several of the major leagues. So it's going to be an exciting time over the next few weeks here in the month of April. Of course, there's a lot of great soccer from the past week that we got to get to here on this week's episode. As far as the home studio goes, wearing my St. Louis City SC shirt. Got an old Chelsea jersey behind me here for obvious reasons. And another great get from my birthday, brand new Ivory Coast home jersey, just that iconic orange and green combination. Didier Drogba, who of course is from the Ivory Coast, is why I got into Chelsea in the first place. And there have been several other great players over the years to play for both Chelsea and the Ivory Coast. So it made sense to get it. Great addition to my collection. And of course, a great addition to the wall. During this episode, if you see me favoring my left arm just a little bit, it's because I got my first shot this week. Very excited. Of course, I encourage everybody when they are able to go out and get vaccinated. It's important not just for your health, but for the health of your family and for your friends. And of course, we can return to a normal society, normal soccer society, especially here, if we can get everybody vaccinated as quickly as possible. So again, very excited for this week's episode. And it's actually funny that I got my shot this week because the pandemic is a little bit of what I wanted to focus on here at the beginning of my opening monologue. As we are set to begin the 2021 season across several of the major soccer leagues here in the U.S., it's going to be hard to forget what is going on still with the pandemic. We're still going to have players and coaches going through extreme protocols. We're still not going to have a full attendance of fans in the stands, and the fans who will be attending these matches will mostly be wearing masks. So the pandemic is still in full force. But I think we're extremely lucky that soccer has found a way during this pandemic to push through, and that the trajectory of a lot of young star players across the world has not been interrupted or completely destroyed. This is a pivotal time in those players' careers, and the fact that they're still playing in these matches, playing in important matches, and still being able to develop despite all that is going around them is a true testament to the clubs, to the players, and to the leagues that they play in. Now, while there have been plenty of great players who have shined this season, not since Kylian Mbappe at AS Monaco have we seen a player rise so quickly on the world stage like Borussia Dortmund striker Erling Haaland. Haaland has set multiple Champions League records in just this season alone. He's been scoring goals in bunches. He's gotten so famous that in this past week's Champions League match, at the conclusion, one of the referees came up to him and asked him to sign his yellow and red cards. Now, we found out that this was for charity, but still, this request is a big no-no. But that's how famous Haaland has got. He's honestly been probably the most talked about player this season. Again, just an amazing trajectory, an amazing development that he has done. He's only 20 years old, and he's already considered one of the top players in the world. However, as we approach the end of this season, Haaland will once again reach a crossroads in his career. With every goal that he scores, the top clubs around the world get more and more desperate to add him to their squad. Now, the good news for Haaland is he's already had to make this decision once before. He originally burst onto the scene as a teenager at FC Salzburg, where he was racking up the goals and setting records in league play, as well as in the Champions League. In January of 2020, he chose to move on and sign for Borussia Dortmund, despite the fact that he had interest from some of the biggest clubs in the world. I think most notably at the time, Manchester United were interested in acquiring him. But he signed for Dortmund due to their track record of developing young players and the opportunity for consistent playing time. That decision, of course, has worked wonders from him. You could just see at this season alone, but also when he first joined with Dortmund, he went on a great goal-scoring tear to open up his account for that club. Now, Haaland allegedly has a release clause in his contract between 75 and 100 million euros, which can be triggered in the summer of 2022. However, honestly, that's probably 50% of what he's actually worth. So, of course, the top clubs around the world are going to be interested in acquiring his services for the fraction of a cost. But at that price, everyone's going to be interested. You're going to be competing against several other different clubs, and it's going to be tough to separate yourself from the pack. The time to act is now. It's time to get him into your side. And the way Haaland is playing right now, there's going to be a club right now this summer that's going to do whatever it takes to sign him. It's been reported over the past week that Haaland's father, as well as renowned agent Mino Raiola, have made the rounds across Europe talking about a potential transfer this summer for Haaland. They've apparently already talked to Barcelona and Real Madrid, as well as they have flown to England to talk to the likes of Manchester City, Manchester United, Chelsea, and Liverpool. So momentum definitely seems to be building towards a big summer move for Haaland here in the next couple of months. Like I said at the beginning, not since Mbappe have we seen a player rise so quickly and draw this level of interest from some of the top clubs in the world, and Haaland need look no further than his peer Mbappe, who was in a similar position a few years ago and had to make the same tough decision. His decision to stay in France and join PSG has done wonders for his career. Now, it's quite possible that Haaland, much like Mbappe or Messi or Ronaldo, can fit into any team or can play in any league, which of course is going to make that decision that much harder. Now, the decision to leave this summer itself could be made much easier depending upon how Dortmund finish the season. There's still a chance that Dortmund can qualify for next year's Champions League through the Bundesliga, or they could in fact win this year's tournament, but both are becoming more and more unlikely by the day. If that's the case and Dortmund miss out on both chances, a move for Haaland this summer is almost a certainty. Now, while a big move is on the horizon for the young striker, his choice isn't quite clear at the moment. Obviously, every club in the world would find a way to make room for him, but some of the top clubs are in desperate need already of what he brings to the table. It could come down to who flashes cash the quickest and who jumps at the opportunity to sign him this summer. The transfer market, it's going to get back more to normal as we continue our way through the pandemic. There will be a lot of player movement, but the conversation will begin and end with Erling Haaland. Now, while Haaland was making news for over a week, he was in fact in action for Dortmund in midweek in the Champions League, which is where I want to begin my recap. 20-year-old Phil Foden scored in the 90th minute for Manchester City to secure their 2-1 first leg victory over Borussia Dortmund. Dortmund's problems with possession in the midfield and at the back were exposed when they turned the ball over and Kevin De Bruyne was able to finish off a really nice move for City to put them up 1-0. Now, Dortmund should have had the equalizer when 17-year-old, it's amazing, 17-year-old Jude Bellingham actually was able to nick the ball off Ederson and basically walk his shot into the goal, but the referee blew his whistle and adjudged that a foul had occurred when in fact on replay it showed that Bellingham actually got the ball first. So extremely tough break for Dortmund. However, what I was really impressed with in this match was their ability to keep the deficit 2-1. It was 1-0 for a very long time until that man again, Erling Haaland, was able to knock down the ball, play a great ball into the box for Marco Reus, who was able to finish it off, tie up the match at 1, and of course get that crucial away goal for Dortmund. However, of course, as I said, Foden was able to notch that game winner late on in the 90th minute to secure that first leg win for Manchester City. So again, Dortmund's defense kind of shows up here once again in a bad spot and loses them the match, but still, I was very impressed with the totality of it. They were able to shake off that refereeing error. There were a couple refereeing errors in this match that went against Dortmund, but still, they were able to get an away goal. They kept things close, and they still have an opportunity in the second leg to advance. Haaland, I know he didn't get on the score sheet. He had a couple opportunities, but still, that really nice setup for Reus for the equalizer was extremely impressive, and we'll have to see. Can they continue to try to go forward to score more goals? But they've got to find a way to keep City off the score sheet, especially now that their goals will count more because they'll be on the road. So still very entertaining match. City were able to get it done late, kind of showed just their winning mentality, what they've been doing for the entirety of the season, and they take a small advantage with them into the second leg. Next up, let's talk Real Madrid versus Liverpool. Behind 2 goals from 20-year-old Vinicius Jr., Madrid were able to beat Liverpool convincingly by a score of 3-1 at home in the first leg. Of course, Liverpool were able to get an away goal through Mo Salah in the second half, but their midfield and their defense were exposed in this match. Midfielders Toni Kroos and Luka Modric completely ran the show for Madrid. They set up all 3 goals. Kroos with a very nice long ball to set up the opener for Vinicius, and of course his long ball forced that terrible error by Trent Alexander-Arnold that led to the second goal. So I was very impressed with Madrid in this match. Remember, they were already without Sergio Ramos due to injury, and then we found out, I think the day before, that center back Rafael Varane tested positive for COVID-19, so he was out. So they were playing their 3rd and 4th string center back and still were able to basically shut down Liverpool for most of the match on the offensive end. Man, again, Kroos and Modric just had so much time on the ball to pick out passes. I don't know what Liverpool were doing. They just weren't as aggressive with their press as they should have been. They didn't play Firmino in this match. And again, they don't have that natural striker that they can use in terms of being able to hold up the ball and kind of create offense from that perspective. So that wasn't working. And again, Madrid just got ahead with that 2-0 lead. Of course, it's good that Liverpool got that away goal. That still gives them a chance. But 3-1 with how Madrid have been playing, this is going to be a very tough deficit for Liverpool to overcome. Again, I know Madrid, they haven't been consistent this season, but lately they've been playing well. And this was a really, really good performance by them. Great coaching performance by Zinedine Zidane. and I would definitely favor them to advance here to the semifinals. Moving on to Wednesday's fixtures, got to start off with the matchup involving last year's final participants. The first leg lived up to the hype. It was played at a fast and furious pace, but PSG were able to come out on top over Bayern Munich, winning the first leg on the road by a score of 3-2. Kylian Mbappe was at his best once again. He opened the scoring in the 3rd minute with a little bit of help from Manuel Neuer. It was a little bit of a goalkeeping error, or at least you would expect better from one of the top goalkeepers in the world. That first goal was set up by Neymar, who was able to set up the second for PSG to his fellow Brazilian Marquinhos. So again, a little bit of a surprising early 2-0 lead for PSG on the road. However, Bayern were able to come back in this match, starting in place of the injured Robert Lewandowski. Former PSG player Eric Choupo-Moting was able to get them on the board in the first half before Thomas Müller was able to equalize in the second half. However, Mbappe had the final say, starting up a great counterattack and finishing it off with a beautiful individual effort in the box for his second goal of the match, which would eventually be the match winner. Now, of course, I understand Bayern was without Lewandowski, best striker in the world right now, and they were without Serge Gnabry, who we found out also tested positive this week for COVID-19. But those guys play offense. The problems with Bayern were on the defensive end. They could not stop the dynamic duo of Neymar and Mbappe. They just got caught out a lot in possession in terms of marking on some of these set pieces as well. That's what led to the Marquinhos goal. And they just could not deal with that speed and that ferocity of PSG's attack. Yes, they were able to fight back in this match and at least close the deficit, but PSG have that dominating advantage on away goals, and Bayern are going to have to basically play perfect defense in the second leg if they want to be able to advance. Definitely still think this is an even tie, even with the injuries right now to Lewandowski, who's going to miss the second leg as well. But PSG, man, very impressive performance. If they're able to top off the reigning champions, they got to be considered the favorites, I think, going forward, even with what Manchester City is doing. And that's who they're most likely going to face in the semifinals if they advance. But still, this was a very impressive statement by PSG, how they were able to pick apart the Bayern defense and how they were able to build up a nice little advantage here going into the second leg. And lastly, of course, playing in Sevilla due to the pandemic, Chelsea were able to control both sides of the ball as the away side in a somewhat comfortable 2-0 victory in the first leg versus FC Porto. After a pretty even first half hour of play, Chelsea's Mason Mount opened the scoring with a nice turn and finish. Porto were able to up the pressure in the second half before Thomas Tuchel brought on Christian Pulisic and Olivier Giroud for the struggling Timo Werner and Kai Havertz. After Pulisic hit the crossbar, Chelsea were able to take advantage of a mistake in Porto's defense, which was pounced on by Ben Chilwell, who was able to take it into the box, round the keeper, and score the second goal of the match. Very impressive performance here by Chelsea. Like I said, they were able to pretty much control both sides of the ball. Yes, Edouard Mendy had to make a couple saves, and Porto were able to put some nice pressure on Chelsea. But for the most part, they had the most dangerous of chances, scoring 2 goals here from open play, despite the fact that Werner and Havertz did not look very good in this match. That's what led to the substitutions in the second half, which were able to get Chelsea that second goal. But still, 2 away goals, kept a clean sheet. Very impressive performance. That's now 3 for 3 for Tuchel in terms of matches he's played in the Champions League with Chelsea, and they were able to keep clean sheets in all of them. That's the name of the game. So Chelsea were able to build up a nice advantage there. I definitely like them going forward to advance in the semifinals. Now, it's just that the way that they've been playing defense. I know there's still some struggles with their personnel in terms of scoring goals, but they got enough here. Mason Mount on fire right now, and with the defense playing as is, I am pretty confident that they will be able to make the next round. So that's all the action from the first legs of the quarterfinal matchups of the Champions League. The second legs go down next week. Very excited to see who will be advancing to the semifinals. Now for my next segment, I want to shine a spotlight on the NWSL. They're going to be the first major soccer league here in the U.S. to start up their season, and it all kicks off tonight with the beginning of the 2021 NWSL Challenge Cup. We're going to get a rematch of last year's final between the Chicago Red Stars and the Houston Dash. A little bit later on tonight, we're going to get Portland Thorns FC versus Kansas City. So to help hype up this tournament and to look ahead for the upcoming season, I wanted to provide 5 storylines that I'll be looking out for the upcoming NWSL Challenge Cup. Coming in at number 5, the Challenge Cup will give us our first look at this year's rookie class. We saw the impact of last year's rookie class on the Challenge Cup tournament and how much success they were able to have, despite the fact that they didn't really get a preseason due to the pandemic. Now with a full preseason to prepare, how will the likes of Emily Fox, Trinity Rodman, and the rest of the rookie class look in their first impression here in the NWSL. Next up at number 4, Racing Louisville FC. The Challenge Cup will give us our first look at the NWSL's newest expansion franchise. How will manager Christy Holly lead this group of veterans and young players in their first taste of competition? It's been a busy offseason for Louisville. They were able to pick up some nice players via trade through the expansion draft. Of course, they were also able to draft a nice group of rookies. How are they going to look in their first season? Of course, they start off with this Challenge Cup format. I'll be interested to see how they adapt and how they get this group to play together. It's a really cool mixture of veterans and young players. Really excited to see how they first look. Coming in at number 3, North Carolina FC. We've been so used to them over the years being at the top of the NWSL, but they were eliminated from the Challenge Cup early last season, and they've lost a ton of talent in the offseason, most notably Crystal Dunn and Abby Delkemper. Are they going to be in the mix this season? They've still got Paul Riley as manager. They've still got a great striking duo in Dabina and Jessica McDonald, but they're going to be a much different side this year. They brought in some new players. I like the addition of Casey Murphy there at goalkeeper, but it's definitely going to be a different North Carolina team than we've seen in years past. And now they're the hunters. They're the ones trying to find their way back to the top of the NWSL. Really excited to see what they come up with this season. Next up, the number 2 storyline for the upcoming Challenge Cup. How will clubs cope with U.S. women's national team absences? Several players are going to miss the beginning of the Challenge Cup due to the U.S. women's national team friendlies versus Sweden and France. How will those teams manage without those players? You got clubs like Portland, like Chicago, like Washington, and more who are going to be missing, 2, 3, maybe even more players from those initial matches. How are clubs going to react? Will they be able to bounce back if they get off to a poor start when those players come back? Will other clubs be able to take advantage of that situation and get off to a good start before those players return? It's going to be really interesting to see in the first few weeks with those players missing who rises to the top and gets off to a quick start. And lastly, the number 1 storyline going into this upcoming Challenge Cup, who is going to be this year's Houston? The Dash took everyone by surprise last year, riding a tremendous hot streak all the way to the final and winning the first edition of this tournament. Are we going to see a repeat of last year, or will one of the prohibitive favorites step up and take the crown? This is not a brand new concept. Clubs now know what to expect from this tournament. As far as a few clubs who may be flying under the radar just a little bit, I have to look at OL Reign, who I thought had a really nice offseason, brought in some nice key players. And also, of course, they'll be getting Megan Rapinoe back once the U.S. women's national team wrap up their friendlies. Also, Washington Spirit. I thought they made a great trade, bringing in U.S. women's national team players Kelly O'Hara and Emily Sonnet. And, of course, drafting Trinity Rodman there as well. Those are a couple clubs who could definitely shock some people. They're not really considered the prohibitive favorites, I think, for the Challenge Cup, but they could definitely get on a run and make some noise here in this tournament. So again, there's plenty of other different storylines, but I wanted to pick out those 5 for you for this upcoming Challenge Cup. Now, in addition to those storylines, I also wanted to highlight 5 players that I will be watching out for in the upcoming NWSL Challenge Cup. I want to start off with a member of the newly rebranded New Jersey, New York Gotham FC club, midfielder Jennifer Cujo. Cujo was very impressive in her rookie season last year for then Sky Blue, starting in 7 of the 9 matches she featured in as an all-around midfielder. Now, after a hectic offseason that saw her traded away and then traded back to Gotham FC, can she take the next step in her career? I think for Gotham to make any noise at the Challenge Cup, she's got to be the one to lead them through it. She's going to have to provide a bit more production than she did in terms of goal scoring and assist, but still, very impressed with her motor. I think she's an excellent athlete, and she did great things in her rookie season. Again, despite the fact of what the pandemic brought and how that kind of dampened what rookies were able to do during that time. Now that she's had a full offseason, I definitely expect her to pick up the pace on the production front, especially if Gotham want to contend here at the Challenge Cup. Next up at number 4, Washington Spirit rookie forward Trinity Rodman. The fact that Dennis Rodman is her father pales in comparison to how good Trinity actually is, coming off of 9 goals in 7 matches at the Women's CONCACAF Under-20 Championship last year. How much of an impact will she have in her first season at Washington? Really excited to see what Trinity can bring to this league. She's got tremendous pace. She's a great finisher, and she's already got some great experience at the youth level for the U.S. Really looking forward to seeing her score a bunch of highlight goals here in the Challenge Cup. Coming in at number 3, Orlando Pride forward Sydney Leroux. Leroux's comeback after the birth of her second child was cut short last season due to the pandemic hitting Orlando hard, as she was only able to feature in 3 matches during the fall series. Once one of the most dominant players on the U.S. women's national team, she's become somewhat of an afterthought. can she rediscover her past form? I know Orlando weren't able to feature at the Challenge Cup and, of course, only played a few matches in the fall series, but it was still really cool to see LaRue score last year. It's been a long road back for her. Again, like I said, she was a really dominant force for the U.S. women's national team. I definitely think she still has a lot left to give, and I'm hoping that she can rediscover her past form, put in some nice goals here for Orlando. She's got a lot of talent around her, of course. She's got Marta, of course, and I believe Alex Morgan will be coming back in the summer. We'll have to see how they look then and if LaRue will be leading the way for them for the initial part of this season. So here's hoping that Sydney Leroux gets back on track and gets back to scoring goals there in Orlando. Next up at number 2, Houston Dash midfielder Kristie Mewis. Mewis was fantastic for the Dash last season. She started in every match, scoring 3 goals and adding 6 assists across all competitions. She's also already gotten off to a great start with her U.S. women's national team career. So can she carry over that momentum into this season? Kristie's sister Sam, of course, has had a great NWSL career and is currently doing great things over there at Manchester City. But Kristie's also coming off of her best season. She was one of the big driving forces behind that great run by the Dash at the Challenge Cup. Of course, she has recently scored a couple goals for the U.S. women's national team in their friendlies, so she's on a bit of a roll. I'm looking to see if that can carry over into this year's Challenge Cup. If she's on form still and is doing great things, the Dash could potentially be back-to-back Challenge Cup champions. So a lot of cool players to watch out for on the Dash, but I think that if they're going to mount another title challenge, Kristie Mewis has got to be at the forefront of that charge. And lastly, my number 1 player to watch out for at the upcoming NWSL Challenge Cup is my favorite women's player, Portland Thorns FC midfielder Crystal Dunn. After years of success at North Carolina, Dunn was traded in the offseason to Portland to be closer to her husband. Now surrounded by a different group of world-class talent, can she lead Portland to a Challenge Cup title? Dunn, she's so versatile. She can play in the midfield, or she can play at left back. Of course, she's going to be joining up with her U.S. women's national team teammate, Becky Sauerbrunn, and all the other great players over there at Portland. They got to be considered one of the favorites to not only win the Challenge Cup, but also compete in the 2021 regular season. I'm really excited to see what she can do on a new team and how Portland are going to use her here in the upcoming season. So there you have it, some storylines and players to watch out for the upcoming NWSL Challenge Cup. If you haven't done so already and you're looking for more coverage, I encourage you all to check out my past couple of episodes. I had interviews with Houston Dash forward Shea Groom and Chicago Red Stars midfielder Alyssa Matuz ahead of tonight's match between Chicago and Houston, talking to them about the upcoming season. So again, very excited for the NWSL to be back. Looking forward to the second edition of the Challenge Cup. Now let's move on to some other soccer and American news. Of course, we're going to start off with MLS and the beginning of the CONCACAF Champions League, which got underway this week with the first 3 MLS clubs in action going unbeaten. First off, you had Portland Timbers, who had to lead a couple of times, but still were able to score a couple of away goals in a 2-2 draw versus Marathon. Atlanta United, despite seeing goalkeeper Brad Guzan sent off in the 43rd minute, were able to scrape out a 1-0 victory over Alajuelense off of an Ezequiel Barco penalty in the second half. Philadelphia Union were able to hold on for a 1-0 victory over Saprissa, despite the fact that there was some chippiness at the end. And Toronto FC were able to draw 1-1 versus Lyon. Columbus Crew SC are also in the CONCACAF Champions League. They are facing off against Real Esteli. So I thought this was a really good initial showing by MLS in the CONCACAF Champions League. I was extremely impressed with what Atlanta were able to do, having their goalkeeper sent off in the 43rd minute. They were able to get that penalty early on in the second half. And then, man, were they able to hold on there for that 1-0 victory. Of course, that was an away goal. Extremely important. But again, with that situation, I was really impressed that they were able to hold on. Philly, nice win there too, especially after that crazy late match tackle. I don't even know how that was not a red card, but they were able to pull through, get that victory. Again, Portland, Toronto, still in their ties. In terms of the taping of this show, it's a little bit of an awkward period, not able to get the Columbus Crew results, but gotta like their chances there as the reigning MLS champions. So again, I thought this was a good start for MLS clubs. We know about the history of the CONCACAF Champions League. Maybe this is the year one of those clubs finally puts it all together and wins the whole thing. But very entertaining start to the tournament. Again, like I said, MLS clubs, I thought, put in a pretty good showing to start. Next up, MLS announced this week that, alongside several other major leagues here in the U.S., they will be implementing a pilot program for concussion substitutions this season. The new rule will allow clubs up to 2 concussion substitutions, which can be used at any time, regardless of how many subs have already been made, to sub off players suspected of suffering from a concussion or who are suffering from a concussion. Officials will continue to stop the match if they suspect a player is suffering from a head injury, but they will not play a role in the process of determining whether a player should be subbed off or not. I think this has been a long time coming. We've seen the studies over the years in all sports, really, just how damaging concussions are. Now that we've been able to possibly implement this program, hopefully we'll be able to study them even further. Protect the players, that is the biggest thing, protect their health. Now you give the opportunity for clubs, regardless of how many substitutions there have been, that they still find a way to be able to take these players off and treat them immediately. So again, this is necessary. I'm glad not just MLS, but other leagues will be getting in on this action. Hopefully the trial is successful and we can fully implement this rule into all soccer. And lastly, just a couple of transaction notes from this week in MLS, starting off with the LA Galaxy finalizing the signing of French phenom Kevin Cabral from second-tier club Valenciennes. The former PSG Academy product has scored 7 goals and added 5 assists in league play this season as a left winger. Very exciting that the Galaxy are getting their hands on another young prospect here who's been lighting it up in the second tier of France. Again, very young player still, and I'll be interested to see what he can bring to the Galaxy attack. Elsewhere, you had Real Salt Lake signing a familiar name, former U.S. men's national team forward Bobby Wood. Wood, obviously, of course, has played his entire career professionally in Germany, but hasn't featured on a U.S. men's national team roster since 2018. So he's looking to rebound here. He's been struggling out of form there in Germany. He's been bouncing around from a couple different clubs. Now he lands in MLS, hoping that he can get his career back on track. I don't know if he's going to be in the mix for the U.S. men's national team. They've been able to develop quite a few strikers here over the past couple of years, but still, happy to have Bobby back. Hope he does good things there at Salt Lake. Elsewhere, as far as the USL Championship is concerned, they rolled out the most expansive TV schedule in league history this week. 19 matches are set to be featured on ESPN, ESPN2, and ESPN Deportes this season, including the first ever match in USL League One history to be televised nationally. That'll be between Greenville Triumph SC and Union Omaha, the top 2 clubs from last season. Again, very exciting news that USL League One will get a national spotlight there with that match, but also some really good matchups will be on national television. Of course, that big match between the Rowdies and Phoenix Rising FC is on there as well. Just really cool that USL continue to expand their TV coverage. Obviously, they got that great deal with ESPN Plus, but to put them on premium cable and put them on a national spotlight and continue to expose people to the league, attract some new fans, and continue to legitimize themselves as well. So again, very exciting news. A couple weeks time here, USL Championship will be back. All right, let's move on to talk some St. Louis soccer news. Going to start off with St. Louis City SC. They announced this week the first dates for open trials for the club's youth academy. The club will host trials on the last 2 Saturdays of April and the first Saturday of May at different locations in Edwardsville, Illinois, Creve Coeur, and St. Louis for boys born in 2005 or 2006. Very exciting. First open trials here for the club's new academy. Again, very excited that a lot of different boys will get this opportunity. Hopefully they continue to expand the locations and the opportunities to other people in different areas all across St. Louis. But still, these are the first few steps. Who knows who they'll find at these trials? Who knows what else will come out of this? So again, very excited to see how that develops here at the end of this month. Next up, real quickly, just wanted to shout out and highlight former St. Louis University player Patrick Weah, who is off to a hot start in preseason with Minnesota United FC. He has scored 2 goals in 3 preseason matches. Now, I'm not sure if he's going to break with the first team to start the season, but the way he's been playing, you got to think that they'll find a way to bring him up soon and that he'll be able to contribute. Again, Minnesota are coming off a great season last year. They made it to the Western Conference Finals, hoping that Patrick gets an opportunity to play with them, continue to develop. He's obviously got some big expectations to live up to, but so far he's been doing quite well up there in Minnesota. Some other big news locally that broke this week was the release of the 2021 schedule for the WPSL. Local clubs Fire and Ice Soccer Academy, as well as the St. Louis Lions, will begin their season on the road on June 5th. Of course, the dates that everybody's interested in when those 2 clubs will meet. First matchup will happen on June 16th at Fire and Ice, with the return matchup at St. Louis Lions on June 30th. So again, very excited to have both those 2 clubs back and competing in 2021. Really excited to see what they can do in the same conference, of course, with the WPSL and some of the new things that they're trying out there, how successful they will be. So again, really good to see some more local soccer coming back here in the coming months, and really looking forward to those derby matchups coming up in June. And lastly, once again, just want to provide another update on how SLU soccer is going. After a couple of consecutive double overtime 1-0 defeats in conference, SLU men's soccer were able to bounce back in a big way with a huge 6-1 victory over St. Bonaventure at home. They face off against Duquesne this weekend in the final match of the regular season. Heading into their final 2 matches of the regular season at home versus Dayton, SLU women's soccer are a perfect 6-0 in conference play and have kept a clean sheet in 4 straight matches and have risen back up in the rankings to number 20 nationally. So again, both SLU soccer teams are doing quite well in conference. Going to make that A-10 tournament and hopefully going to make some noise further on into the postseason. Again, very impressive that SLU women's soccer have risen back up into the national rankings there at number 20. Hopefully they can keep that momentum going and get a good seed for the NCAA tournament. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. A little bit of a short episode this week due to the scheduling I had to go through to get my vaccination. Again, I encourage you all to go out and get vaccinated, but there'll be plenty of soccer to talk about here over the next few weeks. Champions League once again next week, first weekend of the NWSL Challenge Cup to recap, and MLS returns next week. There'll be plenty of talk to you there, and I'll provide an in-depth preview of it on next week's episode. So again, enjoy this weekend. Enjoy the NWSL returning. And I can't wait to be right back here next week with a brand new episode. Thanks again. Have a great weekend.